Yeah. World Cup predictions. Rocking the France jersey right now. Rocking the NBA Finals jersey. That's going crazy right now. Let's go Knicks. Even though I don't got Knicks hat on, I just got Finals hat on. But you know, we're not here for that. We're here for the World Cup. I'm excited. So yeah, I got a whole bracket laid out here. Official FIFA bracket. Get filled out. I want to find something where I can do game by game because I think it's kind of like I think if I did each group game by game, it'd be easier for me to kind of predict, especially the third place teams rather than picking 1 to 4. So, but yeah, also give my insights into a little preview about each team, and I guess at the end of it, or I guess coinciding with the bracket, I don't know. We'll go with who I think will obviously win the World Cup, who I think the best player will be, best young player. I guess we can say the team that will flop, maybe my dark horse for the World Cup, and everything else. So again, as we do the bracket, I guess all of that will just reveal itself. And if I don't mention it throughout, building the bracket out, I'll just mention it at the end of the video. But yeah, World Cup starts in 2 days. Mexico, South Africa kicks off again on Thursday. So I'm excited. Yeah, let's get after it. So Group A. So we have Mexico, South Africa, Korea, and Czechia. So I'm gonna start off with this. I think this is probably out of all the groups in the World Cup, this definitely probably the most evenly contested. I still think Mexico, with the home field advantage, will top this group. Like the Azteca, Mexico. This isn't really the teams you can say in the past. Probably one of the weaker Mexican teams compared to previous generations, but still, over the last couple of years, they really clawed back their grip on CONCACAF. They won the last two Gold Cups, I believe, or the Nations League. I might be that could be false. I know. Regardless, I know they've been beating the U.S. at the Gold Cup and the Nations League uh, over the last maybe 2 years now. So again, I'm gonna have them finishing first. In second, I think this is gonna surprise a lot of people. I'm gonna go with South Africa. I think this is a team that a lot of people are underrating because a lot of people I think have South Africa finishing bottom. Now, for those who know or do not know, I'm Nigerian. So in Nigeria's qualifying group, uh, South Africa was in it too, and they topped the group. They gained other qualifications. So yeah, this team, I think they're very good defensively. I think there's questions about goals, and I think a strength of this team is a lot of their players play in the same club in the domestic league. We saw Lonely Sundowns come to U.S. last year, and I thought they were a good team. I think they were unlucky not to make it to the knockout stage in the Club World Cup. But I'm going to have South Africa finishing second. I'm feeling an upset, like a surprise. Third place, I'm going to go with Czechia. And obviously it has Korea finishing fourth. I think Czechia are a well-balanced team. Again, they have a goal scorer in Patrick Schick. I think they just have solid players all around. And Korea, for me, if you're looking at, you're still relying on a human Sung, who's been doing well in MLS, and Lee King In, Kim and Jae. And other than that, I think the drop off is pretty drastic after that. Maybe I'm underrating Korea, but again, I think people are overrating Korea a little bit going to this tournament. I just think the gap in quality between their star attackers and then the rest of the team is more monumental than the three above. I think these teams are more well rounded, top to bottom. Yeah, that being said, I think this is probably the hardest group to predict because, like I said, I think all these teams can easily finish in any of these positions. But again, I'm gonna have Mexico here, South Africa second. I think again, team that many people are underrating in this group. I think a lot of people have them finishing fourth, from what I've seen from other people's predictions. But yeah, I'm gonna have them finishing second. Moving on to Group B, Canada, Bosnia, Qatar, and Switzerland. Unfortunately, I think Swiss, or unfortunately for Canada, despite being the host nation, unlike Mexico, I don't think they'll be able to top the group. I think Switzerland here are the clear favorite. Again, just seems to be a team that always is at these tournaments, always aims to be finishing around like in the round 16 quarterfinals. And again, out of these three teams, I think they'll make, or they'll just get the job done, regardless. All right, quick update. I just want to pull up the group games because I think Again, I think how the games will fall will impact a lot of how the what's it called, the table will finish. But regardless, I mean, like I said, with Group A, I think the teams are so evenly contested that it's not going to matter too much. But here, this game right here, I think will determine who finishes in second. Again, I would imagine this game finishing as a draw, realistically. Again, I would probably give the edge slightly to Canada just because they're playing at home. But again, I would favor them to finish as a draw. And because Switzerland will most likely will have to win this game, they might rest players in this game, like saying they top the group, Canada, something to play for. I think Canada will finish second just because they play Switzerland in the final game. Is at that point, I think Swiss will have a guarantee at least top the group or definitely make it out. I'm not really giving much to Qatar. Again, I think good on them to make it here, but compared to the other teams in this tournament, definitely on the weaker end. And if they can somehow squeeze in the third, I don't think it'd be the craziest thing that ever happened. But again, I just don't really see them getting past the three in front of them. All right, moving on to Group C. And I'm just going to keep pulling up the fixtures again because for me, this game right here probably determines who will top the group. Again, I think a lot of people have Morocco as dark horses, and we'll get into it when we get to the knockouts because I think that's when we'll start revealing the dark horses a little bit more and my opinions about who I think will be dark horses. But I'm going to go Brazil top the group, Morocco second, followed by Scotland and Haiti. Now, be careful of Haiti. I think a lot of people are underestimating this team. I think, if you think about the crowds here, big Haitian population in the U.S., so, that might play a part in terms of creating an atmosphere for some of the games for them. But who knows? I mean, Brazil and Morocco might batter them. But against Scotland, I think maybe Haiti could sneak over them. I'll be honest. But actually, you know what? Scotland, actually, I'm not lying, but I think they're friendlies. They've done well in the last recent friendlies. Yeah, 4-0 against Bolivia, 4-1 versus Curacao. They're going into in great form. A lot of their players are coming off good seasons. Even though I saw something complaining about some of the squad selections for Scotland, especially up top, but regardless, it looks like they're clicking at the right time. So, yeah, I'm going to have it Brazil, Morocco, Scotland. I think Brazil will beat Morocco in the opening group stage game. And, yeah, moving on to Group D. So, the U.S. I can do a whole spiel about the U.S., about them going to this tournament. And maybe I should do a video. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time because the tournament starts in 2 days. And, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about the U.S. For me, I guess I'll just put it briefly. This tournament for the U.S., I think, has the opportunity to grow soccer in this country to, it's already, taken leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, but really elevate it to, I would say, the next level. Really inspire the next generation. For me, growing up, I think, I'm 22 years old. I think back to the 2014 team, Clint Dempsey, Josie Altidore, like Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones, Tim Howard, like all those guys, like DeMarcus Beasley. And even if we could go back to the 2010, like the 2010 team with like Landon Donovan being Algeria. But again, that team, because the whole narrative there was like the group of death. Like we got in the group, like the U.S. was in the group with Germany, like Germany, who eventually won the tournament, Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal, and Ghana, who were one of the best teams in Africa, and the U.S. got out of that group. And it was only because of, like fine margins against Belgium in the round of 16 that the U.S. went out. But that's really when Tim Howard really made his had insane game. Like they call him Secretary of Defense. Like I forget how many saves he had in that game, but again, crazy. And I think that team lives in the mind of especially me, and I think many other Americans at the time, as just a very memorable team in the U.S. for the World Cup. Now, obviously, 2018, U.S. didn't qualify. Had to go to Trinidad, just had to win. And then you saw a lot of that old core from 2014 really get rinsed out after that game. And 2018 was a massive failure for the U.S. because when it comes to CONCACAF qualifying, really the U.S. is, well, I'm not going to say this. The U.S.'s main competition is obviously Mexico, but then you have the likes of, Costa Rica, Panama. Canada at this point is a non-factor in CONCACAF, but again, the U.S. is expected to qualify, and they fail to do so. And for me, everything since 2018 The failure in Trinidad has been built up to the 2026 World Cup hosted in your own country. Like how the program has been designed, how the U.S. men's national team's program has been designed, has been building up to this moment here. And especially it's coincided with the U.S. If they label it golden generation, relative to the U.S., it is a golden generation, but how accurately rated this team is has been something that's been questioned over time. And I can get a little bit more in depth in terms of my own opinions, but regardless, just put lightly, for me, the U.S. has a lot of pressure just for the fact that what the U.S. can do for soccer in this country and the team themselves, given that the fact that everything since 2018 has been building up to this moment in time. So again, it's pivotal for the U.S. to have a successful World Cup because if they don't, I really feel that soccer in this country or football could be set back. Both, whether it be we're talking about just the public perception of football, soccer in the U.S. because most Americans are not watching European games. They just turn in whenever the U.S. is playing, especially the U.S. is playing only in the World Cup. Let me preface that. And okay, what can this team do on home soil? And like I said, everything that's been building up for the last 8 years, whether it be how I think whether it be calling the U.S. soccer media is kind of overrated and set an expectation for this team to, really do something in this tournament. There's even talks like a few years ago, like, oh, can the U.S. win a World Cup on home soil? Spoiler, the U.S. is not winning the World Cup. But again, a lot of pressure on this team, and I would say the players too, to perform in this World Cup. That being said, sorry for lengthy announcing the U.S. I'm American. I'm biased as the team that I'm going to be rooting for because Nigeria didn't qualify, and my other team, which I'm half Nigerian, half Filipino. Philippines, if they ever make a World Cup, knock on wood. Those would be the two teams I'm rooting for. But yeah, so I'm going to the U.S. topping the group. Again, I think the order is Paraguay, Australia, then Turkey. At this point, I'm going to expect the U.S. to beat Paraguay and Australia. I think not being again, the U.S. has more quality than these teams playing on home soil. I think the U.S. in the friendlies has looked pretty good against Senegal. Against Germany lost, but again, in these friendlies, the U.S.'s best team hasn't been playing for a total of 90 minutes, and it's been in and out. A lot of players being rotated in and out of the team during the friendlies. So I think maybe there's a question mark in terms of chemistry, but I think the U.S. just undeniable quality in certain areas. Christian Pulisic, although he's coming off a bad season with Milan, always turns out for the U.S. Anthony Robinson, Weston McKennie. I think the biggest question for the U.S. is really, your Tim Ream right now is looking like the starting center back alongside Chris Richards and then the goalkeeper. But compared to Paraguay and Australia, I expect the U.S. to take care of business. Turkey, at this point, I think the U.S. might be on 6 points. At worst, I think worst case scenario, 4 points. So there might be a scenario where the U.S. rests players against Turkey. And Turkey as well, I expect them to also get results against both these teams. So I expect Turkey to finish second. I'm just going to pip the U.S. to finish first. Between Paraguay and Australia, I think that I feel like a lot of people are putting Australia to finish bottom. And at the last World Cup, I think you could label Australia as one of the worst going into the tournament. I think a lot of people perceived Australia as one of the worst teams going into the 2022 World Cup. And they always seem to find a way out the group. So I'm gonna back them, and I'm gonna have Paraguay finishing fourth. Other than that, try to keep the analysis a little bit more concise. I just have, again, a lot of thoughts about the U.S. All right, Group E, Germany, Curacao, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. I'm gonna have Germany topping this group. Again, I think Germany will. They're not gonna go. I don't think they'll win all their group games. I think one of these two teams will frustrate them. And between Ivory Coast and Ecuador, which team I think will frustrate them more, I think will be Ecuador. Again, I believe finished runners up in CONCACAF, CONMEBOL qualifying. Defensively, one of the best defensive teams in international football. I think could really frustrate Germany, especially with you have a question mark in terms of who's starting up top for them, like Havertz, Woltemade, and Undav. Again, Havertz looks the most proven in terms of international play, but you look at Havertz as a player, like how consistent of a goal scorer can he be? And there's a lot of question marks. I think Musiala, in terms of Obviously since the injury last summer has been a really stop-start season for him. Been unable to find his best form, and I think there's a lot of pressure on someone like Florian Wirtz to really, after a season he has had, and his previous tournaments with Germany, I really think there's a lot of pressure on him to actually deliver in this tournament because you look at Germany, you wonder who the face of this team is. You would say Musiala, but given his form of late, is he really going to be able to raise his level for the World Cup? So again, but I think Germany will top this group. In second place, I'm going to go Ecuador just because I think they're more likely to get the point over Germany. Ivory Coast and Ecuador, I'm pretty sure it's the opening game in this group. I think, honestly, between these two, I think that'll be a stalemate. It's most likely a draw. And again, I'm going to have Ivory Coast here. And yeah, I mean, if both these two teams lose to Germany, I think Ivory Coast will have a higher chance of racking up the goals against Curacao because, with all due respect to Curacao, I think they're just happy to be here. And again, if they can maybe have a shock result against one of these teams, it would be historic for them. But I don't see it. And yeah, I have Germany finishing first, followed by Ecuador, Ivory Coast, and Curacao. Group F, I think Netherlands, one of the strongest defenses in the tournament. Timber just pulled out with an injury, unfortunate for them, but still very strong defensively. You have Japan, who are coming in, have done very well in friendlies over the last year. They beat England at Wembley. I forget who else they've played in friendlies. You look at Japan's run of recent games; they've done really well. Beat Brazil, lost to the U.S. there, but regardless, have done really well. Haven't conceded goals in these two games. But still, that all being said, I think Matoma's a huge loss for them. And, for me, in my opinion, Matoma being the spirit of this team, you could argue maybe it's Kubo and, other performers like Doan, who I think has had a decent season with Frankfurt. I'm going to go with Netherlands finishing top, followed by Japan. This is going to be a shock. I'm going to go Tunisia finishing third and Sweden finishing fourth. I think Sweden in European qualifying got lucky to just no team is lucky to qualify for the World Cup, but fortunate enough to get a second chance through the Nations League. And I think there is a question mark, whether about Isak's fitness, Gyökeres, Alanga, these are the players we're relying on. Both players inconsistent in the Premier League this season. I think Tunisia are a very defensively resolute team. Certain teams, so again, they definitely could get a point against any of these teams. And I think Sweden, it just hasn't clicked for them. So I think they're going to be one of the disappointments of this tournament. So yeah, I have Netherlands finishing first, Japan second, Tunisia third, Sweden fourth. I'm just tuning to the recording. All right, Group G, Belgium, Egypt, Iran, New Zealand. I think Belgium are a team that's flying very under the radar. I have a bold prediction. One of the players I think will have a very good World Cup is Jeremy Doku. I think in international play, his ability to take on players one-on-one, and especially in international play where the games will be a little bit more open and you'll be able to see more individual qualities shine a lot more. I think Doku, especially against, you look at it compared to Premier League defenders, you already put Premier League defenders on their back feet. Imagine the defenders of Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, with all due respect. So again, I have Belgium finishing first. They've done really well in friendlies. I think they just won 4-0. And I know they beat the U.S. A few months back, 5-2. Yep, smashed Tunisia 5-0. Croatia 2-0. Again, have been on a really good run here. Actually, when was the last time they lost a game? They haven't lost a game since in over a year. So, and again, I think let's say the remnants of the golden generation team are almost gone. There's only 3 members remaining in Courtois, who I still think is the best keeper in the world. And then you have De Bruyne, Lukaku. Again, both of them. Lukaku questioned about his fitness and his sharpness. De Bruyne definitely on the decline. And again, could be a player who's still very injury prone. So, but yeah, I think Belgium could have the chance to do something just because I think the pressure of or the expectation of previous tournaments for Belgium, given the fact they've had this golden generation. Now, its remnants are pretty much gone. I'm not going to say there isn't any pressure on Belgium, but they have the chance to really do something just with the weight off their shoulders. Next up, I'm going to have Egypt, followed by Iran and New Zealand. Again, I think Salah and Marmoush, they're just difference makers. You look at Iran, New Zealand. You know, these two teams really rely on just one talisman, whether it be Taremi for Iran and Chris Wood for New Zealand. But other than that, I think the supporting cast is just not good enough. Egypt's always been a good team. Again, very organized, very passionate, and Iran, just to keep it as simple as like with everything going on, like where will their heads be at with the World Cup, and New Zealand, I just think lacked the quality. So yeah, I'm gonna have Belgium, Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, Spain, Cape Verde, Saudi Arabia, Uruguay. I see Spain getting 9 points in this group. Simple as I think this will be a good way for them to warm into the tournament. Ease into the tournament. I think the two concerns for Spain I have at the moment are one is the goalkeeper because assuming that I'm assuming Unai Simon starts, which is will be a very questionable decision, especially after the season David Raya had and the quality of Juan Garcia. And secondly, I think Yamal, he hasn't played in a while, so I think this will be a good way to get him up to speed in this tournament. I think it's something that's not really being talked about. People are expecting Yamal to hit the ground running. I don't think he will. I think it'll take some time to really get up to speed, just because he's been out for the last 2 months. Next, in second place, I'm tempted to go with an upset here. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not really convinced by Uruguay. I think there's a question mark in terms of where the goals are coming from with them. Sure, Darwin Núñez has had periods for the national team where he's been in good form, but again with Uruguay, I just think they're a team. I don't rate them very highly. I'll be honest. I think this is a team that might disappoint this World Cup. I just have whether it just be a gut feeling or just my perception of this team. I just think Uruguay have been a national team steadily on the decline for the last couple of years. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with the upset. I think Cape Verde. I think a lot of people look at Cape Verde as a small country, like like similar in the vein of like Curacao, like they're just here to have fun. And they're a good team. I'm saying African qualifiers isn't a joke. I believe Ivory Coast was in their group, if I'm correct. Which I think again, Ivory Coast is another very strong team in Africa. Let me see. If I go to their fixtures, I believe that was in their let's see, World Cup qualification CAF. I could just hit the table, but we'll just do it the hard way. They beat a Cameroonian team in their group, right? So again, this team isn't a pushover. I'm gonna have them finishing second. I'm gonna have this. I think again in the World Cup you can't predict. You can't always predict the best team. I think you have to try to anticipate upsets. This is an upset I'm gonna try to anticipate. I think Cape Verde gonna finish second. I'll have Uruguay third and Saudi Arabia fourth. I think for Saudi, right? Not much to them. We're still very much relying on Al-Dassari. And I just don't really see the Saudi Arabia team doing anything special this World Cup. Moving on to Group I. France, Senegal, Iraq, Norway. I have France topping the group. Now, again, France lost to Ivory Coast, and then they just beat Northern Ireland. For me with France, again, you look at the squad, the talent is undeniable in that team. I think really is playing a sea of doubt in my mind is definitely Deschamps. Yes, he's a World Cup winning manager. Yes, he's got to the final. But again, I think his decisions at times have almost cost France in certain games, especially in the Euros. And I think with Deschamps, really his time to leave was after this Euros. So yeah, and with France, again, at least within the group, I'll get into like maybe a little bit more once we get to the knockout stage. I think France will make work of Senegal. Iraq is just there to participate. And Norway, here's my thing with Norway. I have Senegal finishing second and Norway finishing third. Let me just spoil that. The reason I say this is I think Senegal are a team. I think a lot of people have Norway finishing here just because of Holland. I think playing at the World Cup, there's a lot, obviously, like every player here, this is their first major international tournament. They haven't even played in the Euros. Senegal, AFCON champions, have been at the World Cup. A lot of their team has been, it's been the same core players for the last couple of years now. I think the experience will just get them by into second, especially in the head-to-head versus Norway. I think Senegal can get a point against Norway or even might win against Norway. I think Norway, obviously their ceiling is a lot higher in terms of, with Holland, Odegaard, exciting players like Nusa and Bob. But I think Senegal's experience will get them into second place. And Iraq, again, it'll just be a game for these teams to rack up goals. But, nothing against them. Hope they can get maybe a shock result or something. But again, I have it as France, Senegal, Norway. All right, Group J: Argentina, Algeria, Austria, and Jordan. I have Argentina finishing first. Again, I think there's just a bit of a discrepancy between Argentina and the rest of these teams. Messi, Julian Alvarez. Argentina's midfield is very strong. Again, a lot of the same core from the last World Cup. We'll see how they fare. And again, there's a question about like Nico Paz, for example. They have a couple other young players coming in. I like it. For example, I like Barco a lot. I think he's a very talented player. I think he should be starting for them. Finishing second, I'm going to go with Ralph Rangnick's Austria. Austria, they had a good Euros, or fairly good Euros, and this has been a team that's been been solid in international play for the last couple of years now under Ralph Rangnick. So I'm going to have them in second. Algeria had them in third. I think with Algeria, the reason why I say I think they have a very similar squad in Austria in terms of quality. I just with Petkovic, and I think Algeria is still relying a lot on their older core. And yes, they have a lot of young players, young talented players, but how much will they be trusted, and how much can they really do in the World Cup? I'm just gonna go with Austria just because I think they're a more proven team. But again, this can easily switch. Obviously, there's a lot of history between these two teams in the World Cup, and that head-to-head will be electric. And Jordan, again, I just think the discrepancy in quality between these two teams and Jordan will just be too much, and I had them finishing fourth. All right, on to Group K. Portugal, DR Congo, Uzbekistan, and Colombia. I have Portugal initially finishing first, but I wouldn't be surprised if here, I'm just going to lay out how I think the group will fall, and I'll explain my reasoning. I won't be surprised if this happens, because I believe Colombia and Portugal play each other in the last game, and it might be a point where I think Portugal might rest players, Colombia might have something to fight for, and because of which Colombia just pips them like this. I also can see a scenario where on the site seems to be frozen. All right, we should be good. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, as I was saying, I think Colombia could top them. Watch out for Congo though. I think this is another team that's flying a bit under the radar. I believe they haven't lost a game in like I want to say the bar the game in AFCON where they lost in the final minutes against. Oh well, I'm lying a little bit, but Congo. Obviously I saw them knock out Nigeria in World Cup qualifying, but they are a team very good defensively. Can be slow starters at times, but very defensive, resilient, and I think could even beat Colombia to the second spot. But again, I think Colombia just have more difference makers. So I'm gonna. It's like FIFA's gotta get their stuff together, man. The site keeps freezing up. All right, should be back. I'm just hopefully no more difficulties for the rest of the video, but I doubt it. And I have Uzbekistan finishing fourth. Bart, you look past Kusanov. I think again, this is a team again could cause upsets. Definitely could make some noise in this tournament, but I think again Portugal, Colombia have more difference makers, more proven quality. I think Congo, from what I've seen, are just a more organized, more defensively resilient team. I think will show more experience against the likes of Portugal and Colombia rather than Uzbekistan. And yeah, so I have it Portugal 1, Colombia 2, Congo 3, and Uzbekistan 4th. And finally, on to Group L with England, Croatia, Ghana, and Panama. So I think England will top this group, but I don't think they'll make it easy. I think they open against Croatia. And again, with England in these tournaments, it seems like it's never easy with England. Like you would expect them, given their squad they have, to comfortably win this group. I mean, they should. I think they will. But again, against Croatia, I think they'll narrowly win. I don't see them winning by more than a goal in this game. In second place, I will have Croatia. I just think they'll have enough experience to carry them by, followed by Ghana and Panama. I don't want to predict the 8. I'm still talking about Group L. Whoa. Okay. Ghana. who are a very interesting team because if you look at Ghana on paper, they look like a good team, but they've been a team that has, I would say, underperformed in Africa for the last couple years now. I'm saying that as a Nigerian supporter, so take that as you will. But again, we're in the last AFCON. They had a whole debacle of their national team, I think, believe over a year ago, something with like the manager and the coaches, if I remember correctly. I think they actually just recently replaced their manager, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, they hired Carlos Queiroz back in April. So again, I think with Ghana, there's a lot of question marks just in terms of how organized they'll be and if they can actually perform to their level on paper. And Panama, again, I just think there's nothing special about them. Back in the World Cup since 2018, and they were actually in England's group. I remember that game. Got unfortunately battered 6-0. I think it'll be a similar story this time around too. All right, I'm gonna make one slight adjustment just to my predictions, just because, given the fact that FIFA's website is terrible, I actually a lot of times just looking back at my predictions, I'm gonna actually Norway ahead of Senegal. My reason is this. Norway actually opened against Iraq, which I think will give them a lot more confidence going into the game versus Senegal, which I believe is their second game. So, and I think goal difference will matter with Senegal. If you look at, I think from top to bottom, very good team, but they're still relying upon Nico Jackson up top, while Norway have Holland, even have Sorloth. And if it comes down to goal difference, I think it'll be a case where Norway will score more against Iraq than Senegal do against Iraq. Even the France-Norway game, it might come to a point where France don't even need to win that game, so they might play their second team. Now, yes, France's second team is also still a great team, but Norway might be able to get something in that game. So I'm actually going to go Norway second and Senegal third. Again, that's why I'm talking about how the games fall. I think it's very important for how some of these teams end up finishing in their groups. Okay, so best third place teams. That being said, which teams do I think will get a win? That's pretty much how I'm envisioning this. I think if you were to get 3 points, you'd pretty much be good enough to finish as a best place, third place team. So I think Senegal will get a win in their group. I already mentioned that they have Iraq. I think Czechia will, just because how tightly contested their group is. I think they will get enough points. I think Ivory Coast as well, just because they have Curacao in the group. I think that should be a win. I'm going to go. I'm not really sure about Iran. I think Algeria will. I think they will get past Jordan. And they could even draw Austria. I'm going to go with Bosnia. I think they'll get a win against Qatar. I'll go Uruguay. I'll go with Uruguay, even though I'm not entirely confident with that. Ghana might get a win, but I'm feeling they could get battered to England and they might lose by 2 goals to like Croatia or something. Congo. They're good defensively, but they have enough to get a win. Tunisia, I think Tunisia, the best they can hope for is draws in their group. I don't see a way Tunisia will be able to get a win. Australia, I mean, if they want to finish third, they'll have to beat Paraguay realistically. So maybe Australia is there. And I don't think this is a team that'll get battered by either Turkey or the U.S. So maybe Australia is there. Scotland, I mean, they beat Haiti, but they could hold some serious goal deficits to. I think they lose to both Morocco and Brazil. How many teams I could put here? I got 2 more. Well, Iran have enough to get a result over New Zealand. I think they will. I'm gonna go with Iran. I think they'll be on 3 points, and well, they might. To be honest, they could get battered by. For me, they could get battered by Belgium. So go different. If we're going between these 2 teams, because for me, I think they're the same. I think Iran is more likely to get battered by Belgium, Egypt than Ghana is by England and Croatia. Yeah, I'll go Ghana maybe. I'll go Ghana, and then for me, I think it's I'll go Iran. I'll go with Iran. I think Australia. The problem with Australia is, I don't think they're gonna get a win against the U.S. or Turkey. And Paraguay are very good defensively. Will Australia have enough to get the edge over them? I'm not sure. However, Australia were able to beat Paraguay, then I think they would be going through. But I just don't know. I'm unsure about them being able to register a win. Tunisia, I don't think they're gonna win. Congo as well. I just think their group. I think they'll be able to stay in games, but I don't know if they'll be able to actually be able to get 3 points. And Scotland, I just think, again with Brazil, Morocco, I think you could have a scenario where actually, you know what? Actually, I'm going to give it to Scotland. I'm going to give it to Scotland. I think Scotland has a little bit more to them than Ghana. And I think between Iran and Ghana, I'm spending too long in the third place team. The third place team might be the hardest part to predict of everything. Yeah, no, I'm gonna back Iran. I'm gonna back Iran over Ghana. All right, on to knockouts. Germany, Scotland. Ooh, you know what? This we saw this as the opening game in the Euros. And Germany won convincingly against Scotland. I think we'll see a similar story here. I think this is where Scotland's run ends. France versus Iran, same thing here. I think this is a pretty straightforward one. I can't see a different result. South Africa, Canada. That's a very interesting game. I'm gonna back the host here. Again, I think Canada have a little bit more, especially going forward. You know, like Sir Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies. Hopefully, at this point, will be fully fit for Canada. Again, question marks about his fitness still, and yeah, South Africa good defensively, but I think Canada will have a little bit more to them. I know the game's in LA, but they'll definitely they'll surely have more home support than South Africa. Netherlands, Morocco. It's a fascinating game. And now for me, I think Morocco. The way people are talking about Morocco in this tournament, I think not to toot my own horn a little bit here, but in 2022, I predicted Morocco to go to the quarters. So they were my dark horse last World Cup. I think Morocco going to this tournament, I think are being not extremely overrated, but I think they are being overrated just because of what they did last tournament. This is a different Moroccan team, different manager. Their manager actually stepped down from the helm very recently. So I think Morocco are going to be a team that I think a lot of people have them going to maybe even the quarterfinals. I don't see them getting past at least round 16. And if they come up against the Dutch, I think the Dutch will be better. Moving on, Colombia, Croatia. This is again up in Toronto, which I actually think will help Croatia a little bit because I think if this game is actually played like anywhere, it's pretty much a home. Anywhere else, this is like a home game for Colombia. Croatia, very experienced team. Colombia, I think, could be maybe a bit too dynamic for them. I'm gonna give it to Colombia but again, I think this one will be very tightly contested. Spain, Austria. I'm gonna give it to Spain. I think we'll just have too much quality for Austria. USA, Bosnia. Similar vein. I think the U.S. Again, if we're going from top to bottom, we'll have more quality across the pitch. You're looking at a Bosnia team that's still, not let's not say relying, but Dzeko is still a big huge player from that 40 years old. I think the U.S. If they were to lose to Bosnia in this game, it would be an extreme disappointment. I'm gonna go to the U.S. Belgium, Czechia. Again, I think Belgium. If you want instantly leaning to you could say dark horse. I think Belgium, for me, I think can make a serious run this tournament. I think they can. If you want to go with my dark horse, I think is Belgium even considered a dark horse? If they are, they're my dark horse. That's pretty much what I'm saying. Brazil, Japan. Ooh, that's a fascinating one. It could be set up for an upset, but I'm gonna back Brazil here. I'm going to back Brazil. Japan, another team that many people are having as dark horses. For me, I think I'm not gonna say their whole team relies on Matoma, but I think Matoma is a huge loss for them. But again, if Japan were to beat Brazil, I don't think that would be it would be a crazy result, but I don't think it would be, out this world. Well, actually, it would be out this world, but given how the status of Brazil. But you get what I'm saying. Like, Japan are a good team. Next up, Ecuador, Norway. I'm going to go with Norway. I think in terms of this matchup, I think this is actually a bad matchup for Ecuador. I think Ecuador, you look and they rely heavily a lot on their defensive resilience. And if you look at Norway, I think they have a lot of attacking firepower. And if you were to say and you want to make it a physical game, Norway, they're a big team. You have like Erling Haaland and Sorloth up top. I think if this match were to happen, like Ecuador, I don't think they'd be able to execute their game plan against Norway, given the firepower they have and the physicality they can bring. So, yeah, Mexico versus Uruguay in Mexico City. I think I'm going to go with Mexico here. I'm going to say the home crowd, home team advantage. Uruguay, who I think a team slightly on the decline, could be a bit fragile. Yes, it'll be a very passionate team. This will be a very heated game. Like you'll probably have yellows and cards flying, because both these teams are very passionate when it comes to games. And I think the atmosphere, in the Azteca, will just make it that way. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Mexico. England, Senegal. We saw this in the last World Cup. Again, I think England at this point, maybe we'll start getting into their flow a little bit more. I think we'll have just enough against Senegal. But yeah, will definitely be a closer game than last time, in my opinion. Argentina, Cape Verde. Again, Argentina, just too much quality, I think, in their team. Turkey, Egypt. Ooh. Now, this is a very interesting one. Now, you kind of Salah Marmoush versus You know, Yoda is questioned about his injury and his fitness at the moment. Hasn't featured in any of their friendlies since he picked up an injury, I believe, back in May. You know, you got Artigola, Hakan. For me, this is a bit of a coin toss, if I'm being honest. I'm going to back Egypt. I'm going to back Egypt. For me, this is a 50-50. I'm going to go either way. I'm going to go with a Salah legacy game. I'm going to go off experience, and I'm going to go off Salah. Switzerland, Algeria. I think this will also be a very tightly contested game. For me, here's a scenario. If Algeria are able to unlock their young players, I think Algeria can win. But if Algeria are unable to reach maybe the potential they can play at, then I think it's a straightforward game for the Swiss. The question is, do I predict the upset here? That's the real question. Because I think so far I haven't predicted any upsets, at least in the knockouts. So it'll definitely be at least one. I'm going to go with Algeria to beat Switzerland. Portugal, Ivory Coast. I wish this matchup didn't happen because if Ivory Coast were... You see, if this is like Ivory Coast here, I would just say Ivory Coast flat. If Ivory Coast is here, I'd say Ivory Coast. I think Ivory Coast, again, very good team. Very good team. Very good defensively. Again, have a lot of dynamic players. You know, Diamande, I think Ahmad. You know, they just got acquired Bonnie, you know, the striker from Inter. They switched allegiances. Yeah, I think Ivory Coast, if they weren't up against Portugal, I think could make a run. But I think it's just a bad matchup for them in the round of 32. So I'm gonna go with Portugal. All right, moving on to round of 16, Germany, France. Heavy hitter here. I'm gonna go with France. I think this is where Germany's run end. I think at this point, if that face of Germany doesn't reveal itself, whether it be Musiala, Wirtz, or if it's someone else who just emerges, you know, this could have been maybe a tournament for Lan Carl if he didn't get injured. Don't really see how Germany can cope with France, especially when going forward. Like, I think France just have too much quality. Canada, Netherlands, I just think this is where Canada's run, and I'm going to go with the Dutch. Similar vein, Canada, I think is as far as it can go. Netherlands will be too strong defensively, too much in midfield, and we'll just find a way to win this game. I think, you know, Canada under Jesse Marsch, they actually made the semifinals of the Copa America, so again, I think this is a team that's building something. So I think that, you know, they get to round 16. I think that's something to be proud of for them, and it'd be a good run. Colombia, Spain. Now, if this was like maybe Colombia of like, let's say 2 years ago, they actually did beat Spain. I remember in a friendly in the London Stadium. I remember that. I would actually consider Colombia maybe upsetting Spain. Would I still? I'm gonna go no, but I think there could be an upset. If there was an upset, I think it could be here. I think it could be. If you, again, like I said, if Colombia, this is Colombia 2 years ago, like the Colombia that was at Copa America, got the Copa America final, and I was on a crazy unbeaten run. I think I would maybe favor them here. I think I would maybe back them for the upset because again, you get Colombia game in Dallas. That's a home. I'm gonna be honest, it's a home game. It's a home game for them. So again, stadium will be rocking. Belgium, USA, replay of again, back to 2014 round 16, Tim Howard game. See, for me, this is the type of game where I think if the U.S. was to make the difference, they have to make the difference. But unfortunately, I'm going to say no. This is my problem with this is my, not problem with the U.S., this is my fear with the U.S. I think the U.S., as soon as they come up against, you know, like a team that's either on their level or a team where maybe, you know, is slightly ahead of them in quality, I think they'll falter. I just don't think the U.S. has the quality to be a team on the same level as them, or even maybe a team slightly above them, and use that home advantage to overwhelm that team and have an upset. Like, let's say like this was I don't know. Let's say this was Germany, for example. Like, if the U.S. came, well, they just played in a friendly, but you know what I'm saying? If they came up in action World Cup, I just don't think the U.S. would be able to do it. I have a question mark in terms of how much they're able to elevate their game against teams that are on par opposition or opposition that's greater than them. So, yeah, I think the U.S. won't get past Belgium. Belgium already beat them in a friendly pretty convincingly. I know you can question about the starters in that game, but again, for me, this is the pivotal game. Now, if the U.S. gets to here, and you told me the U.S. were to end here in round 16 against Belgium, would be deemed a success or a failure, I would lean more toward a failure than a success. But obviously, you know, context might look at something like this differently. But for me, I think the expectation for the U.S. would be to be in and around I think a full-on success for the U.S. would be to make the quarterfinals. The round 16, I think, is a bit of a gray area. You need context applied. Like, again, if the U.S. came against, let's say, like Spain here and lost, I don't think that would be deemed a failure. But against Belgium, I think, you know, there's not much difference in quality between these two teams. I'm gonna back Belgium. So yeah, Brazil, Norway. All these games, this will be a home game for Brazil. I just for some context, I went to the World Cup 2018 in Russia. I went to watch Brazil, Costa Rica, and let me tell you, think about how far Brazil is from, you know, from Russia, and I was in St. Petersburg, and went to go see Brazil, Costa Rica, and the whole stadium was wearing yellow and green. The whole stadium. I'm telling you, their fans travel crazy. I don't expect Norway to bring the same atmosphere, but maybe they'll prove me wrong. I think Norway at this point will really be feeling an opportunity to make history. Brazil will feel the pressure of the fact they're just Brazil. They're the most successful national team in the sport. I'm gonna go with Holland Gabriel. Is also interesting. That's also a funny one. Do I think it would have clicked for Brazil at this point? Would top the group. This game against Japan could be like one where it's just not convincing, but they get over the line. I'm gonna go with Norway. I'm gonna predict an upset here. I'm gonna go Brazil out in the round of 16. I'm trying to predict some type of upset. Like you can't pick all favorites all the way. I'm gonna go with Norway. Mexico, England. Again, I think England will get the job done off sheer quality, but Mexico will make it difficult. From England will have to work hard for this result. Yeah, I'm gonna go with England to beat Mexico, but it's not gonna be easy. I just think Mexico, if this was the Mexican team of 2010s, 2000s, 90s, anything of those lines, maybe I would give them more of a chance against England. I just think this Mexican team just lacked the quality, and England will just have too much for them. Argentina, Egypt, similar vein. I think Egypt, this is as far as it can really go realistically. I think Argentina, again, will just have too much quality up and down the pitch. Salah, as much as the legacy game against here, will you be able to do it in back-to-back games, especially against a tougher team, a more grittier team in Argentina? I don't think so. But watch out, Egypt could frustrate Argentina. But I expect Argentina just to get over the line here. And Algeria, Portugal, again, similar. I think this is as far as Algeria can really take it. I think Portugal just have too much quality for them. So that sets up our quarterfinals. So France, Netherlands. The thing is, I don't like either of their managers. If one of these managers convinced me a little bit, I would give it to either team. For example, like I could see the Dutch, like this Dutch team on paper, I think could beat this France team. I think it could. Again, they're friendlies. They lost to Algeria. I believe they lost to Uzbekistan. I mean, both teams should be firing at this point. Like we should know all about these teams at this stage in the tournament. I'm gonna go with France. I just don't see a world where France doesn't at least make the semifinal just off sheer quality. So, yeah, Spain, Belgium. Again, I think Spain was just too much for Belgium here. I think as far as Belgium can really go, but again, I think a quarterfinals for this Belgian team, which this is the best they performed in the World Cup since definitely since last time they got grouped last time, and 2018 that was that squad had the quality to win the World Cup. But I think this is really, if Belgium were to come against Spain here, I think Spain. At this point in the tournament, you'll have a Yamal, who will be in full fitness at this point, should be flying, and I think everything should be clicking for Spain at this stage in the tournament. England, Norway. I'm gonna go with England. I think with Norway, at this point, I look at the thing with Norway up against these teams. I think all these teams have weaknesses. When you get to England, if you go for their starting 11 from top to bottom, there isn't much weakness in this side. Like England's team is very balanced. If Norway, I think there's question mark, especially their goalkeeper, Nyland. I think there's a question mark in terms of how many games he's played in this past season. Again, with England, I think you have the depth at this point. Like the fatigue, like squad depth is going to be very important in these tournaments. Like teams with deeper squads, I think will have an advantage just given the fact that the heat, the reputation coming off a long season. I won't be surprised if this game goes to extra time, for example. But I'm gonna give England make the difference. Even a penalty shot. I know England penalty shots, but you look past, let's say, Holland and even Sorloth, like for Norway, like how many guys can step up for them, and obviously their keeper Pickford. Yeah, I'm gonna go England. Messi, Ronaldo, and I'm gonna go with Portugal. Not because of Ronaldo, and Argentina don't lose because of Messi. I just think, again, I think national teams are kind of approach the same tournament with the same core players, especially. I mean, like the previous World Cup winners, you approach tournaments the same core group of players. Like, yes, they have a lot of chemistry. They've won 3 tournaments together. I think at this point, like McAllister, DePaul, and whether it be Enzo, Paredes, whoever the third midfielder will be, I think DePaul, he's playing in Miami now. Well, his level will be at. McAllister coming off a bad season. Enzo Fernandez, I do think is one of the more underrated players in the Premier League. But again, you look at Portugal's midfield. I think there's just too much quality there. And again, I'm gonna go with Portugal here. Also, off gut feeling, I just don't think Argentina will retain the World Cup. I think at some point they'll hit a roadblock. And this game will most likely be a home game for Argentina. Most likely Kansas. I don't know how well their fans will travel to Kansas. Like Kansas isn't really you can say like unlike other cities in the US where you have people from all over the place. Kansas State, I don't know how global it is. So I don't know how many local Argentinian fans will get. Same thing with Portuguese fans, but I'm gonna go with Portugal. France, Spain, rematch of the Euro semifinal. France or Spain? Do I expect France to get back to a third successive World Cup final, or is it time for Spain? I'm going to go with Spain. And here's my reason why. I think I think there'll still be a question mark, even like the last Euros, for example. Like for the last two tournaments for France, they made it to the World Cup final and the Euro semifinal, and there's still been question marks from the manager, which tells me a lot about the team, especially like this attack. Like even the last Euro, I think with the last tournament, they made the semifinal still, and I think there's a lot of questions about how well they were playing. Yes, Mbappe had the face mask, and there was a question about his fitness. I think Diego Fund is a better manager. I think if you look at the difference in midfield, with France's midfield, like a lot of people like to say it's a weakness. It's a weakness relative to the quality in the other positions, but it's still very good. But Spain's midfield, I think Rodri, Pedri, and I don't know who that third midfielder would be, whether it be Fabian Ruiz or Dani Olmo. I think they have a stronger midfield like Tchouaméni, bar Tchouaméni, the other midfielder in there, whether it be it's Rabiot or Conte. And France will get a line with four attackers, whether it be Dembele in at a 10, Elise in at a 10, Cherki in at a 10. I think playing in Spain who probably will pack three actual midfielders in the game. I think Spain will do more to control the game. Sure, France have definitely more difference makers in the attack, but I'm going to go off the fact that I trust Diego Fonte more to, let's say, win this game or manage it, or set up his team to win rather than Deschamps. So I'm going to go with Spain. England, Portugal. The thing with England, right? On paper, I think they should win this game. I'll be honest. But for me, with England, the problem is it seems to be like a mental block. I think whenever England gets in these type of games, it's like they're nervous. Like obviously, like the English media, we know how the English media is. They're going to be talking all tournament. They already started with, is Jude Bellingham in England's best starting 11? I'm not even going to entertain that conversation. It's, for me, when it comes to this game, well, the build up to this game and just the English mentality of like, can we do it? Like, can we? England never really goes into these games like saying like, oh yeah, we should beat Portugal, or like we can't beat Portugal. It's always like a what if, like can we beat Portugal? Like it seems like they never really have a swagger to them. Now Portugal, again, haven't been to this stage in the World Cup since 2006. Massive pressure on both these teams to reach the final. The question is like Ronaldo, right? At this stage in the tournament, Ronaldo will probably have played every single minute of the knockouts, and he's gonna want to start this game, obviously. Can you carry a passenger against England and Ronaldo? I don't know. A couple months ago, I said I think Portugal will win the World Cup. I did say that, but I'm tempted to say England. Just because I think at this point in the game. My problem is, can you carry like Ronaldo being a passenger in all these games? I think you can get away with even this one because you have Messi to counteract that. In this game, I don't know. Like you're playing 4 days later. I'm gonna go with England. Just because I think at this point, I think Ronaldo, like that's my biggest question. Will Ronaldo hinder them at this point? I think he will. And again, I think there's even more question marks about their attack. Like his layout, like someone like Reece James is very, he's very defensively solid. Like he could be someone who takes the layout out the game. And other than that, you're looking at off the other side, whether it be Pedro Neto, João Felix, Conceição. I'm not really intimidated by any three of those names. I'll be honest. Maybe João Felix on his day, but again, you have Nico O'Reilly on that side. And I think he'll actually be more of an offensive threat than any of Portugal's right wingers. So we have Spain-England final. Is it coming home? Or is Yamal winning the World Cup on his first go? We saw the same replay of the Euro final. I mean, you'd argue Spain has a mental edge in the fact that they beat England in the final last 2 years ago. Thing is, like Spain, they lost the Nations League. They didn't really play well in that game. I'm gonna go Spain. Narrowly. narrowly. I'm just gonna go with the fact they beat England in the last Euros. I think that'll play a psychological factor, and the fact just the England. I just think the mentality. Maybe Tuchel will change that. I just think with the English media, all that type of stuff, like the noise, like I got the Southgate, like he's playing Saka left back just because the English media says so. Like there's conversations about dropping Kane, right? And there's people with based on this conversation, you would think Kane wouldn't be part of this England team, right? This guy has probably had the best individual season in Europe, and I think narrative talk like that will get in their way. Now, that being said, like let's say this is France too, I think France would beat England in the final. Like if this is France, I'm actually more convinced France would beat England in the final rather than Spain beating England in the final. But yeah, and I guess you could say the vice versa argument. If Portugal get here, I think Portugal could win. But I think this matchup, I think England beat Portugal. So yeah, that's my predictions. Now, that being said, if we're rocking with that, so for me, if Spain were to win the World Cup, best player, I think it has to be Yamal. My only question would be like, is Yamal gonna again? Like I say, he's coming off an injury, so how fast will it take for him to get kick into form? But I think at this point, I think Yamal will probably be the best player in this tournament. If maybe it's someone in England, I'll say Kane. I'll say Kane just because, again, I'm not really. I don't even know. I think even you ask England fans like how Tuchel set up England. I like what's England's best 11 yet with Tuchel, or Tuchel's favorite 11. You wouldn't know yet. Best young player again. That coincides with Yamal. But if it wasn't Yamal, I think Nico O'Reilly is a shout. Just because if England go this far, again he'll be playing. I believe he'll just be playing every game for them at left back. I don't really unless Tuchel likes Dan Burn more left back. But again, I think you're just asking for trouble. I think João Neves is also is a good shout. I think João Neves is also a good shout for best young player, depending on how far Portugal go. Just off the top of my head. And I know I have Brazil crashing out here, but if they were to go on a run, I would maybe say Endrick. It could be there. But yeah, I'm gonna go, obviously Yamal, but if it's not Yamal, I'm gonna go Nico O'Reilly. But again, my honorable mentions for best young player would be Neves, and I think Endrick could be something for Brazil. Top goal scorer, if England gets here, it's gotta be Kane. I think Kane is a safe answer with top goal scorer. I think another one could be interesting. If I predict Norway's gonna go as far as they are, I think could be Holland, just because the game against Iraq, I think could be a bloodbath of a game. So you might have a scenario where Holland scores like 3-4 goals in one game, and then maybe he picks up like 1-2 goals in these games, puts him on 6. So he could finish as top goal scorer. Just off that, but I'm going to go with Kane if they get here. Plus, England has a chance to batter likes of Panama, but I think they'll rotate against Panama, so I don't know if Kane will play. Yeah, I guess if we're going off of that, again, my most disappointing team in the tournament, relative to expectation, of course, gotta go with. I mean, based off my bracket here, I think Germany and Brazil are two sides of the same coin. You have two historical giants who you really went back to win the World Cup. I'm gonna go with Brazil though, because I think with Brazil, you had the whole drama with Neymar. And there's a lot of pressure on Neymar to actually perform on this World Cup, in my opinion, because it's this whole saga about the whole country crying out for him to come into his team, despite questions about his fitness and his form. Pretty much, Ancelotti is forced to pick him. There's a question mark about his fitness even going into the World Cup. Like, will he be available for the first game? And if he's there, like, what version of Neymar are we going to see? And I'm a huge Neymar guy, but I kind of question the level that he can play at. I'm like, as a Neymar fan, I'm worried that you're going to see a version of Neymar that looks like an absolute shell of himself. And if Brazil go out the way I predict them to, then I think he'll get berated. Brazil's failure will all fall down the fact that, like, oh, why did we bring in Neymar? Like, why? Like, Neymar was a waste of time. We wasted an opportunity with Neymar. So, yeah, I'm going to go Brazil. Most disappointing. And that being said, if that coincides, the most disappointing player would be Neymar. I think Vinicius is also a good shout because, again, if Neymar wasn't there, Neymar will be the face of this team. But Vinny was supposed to spearhead this team really as the face of it, has been unable to do that since he's broken into the Brazil team. I think another underrated shout is the U.S. Again, if they get here, I think context matters. Like, let's say they went out to Belgium on penalties, I don't think that would be the craziest thing in the world. But let's say they get beat by Belgium like 2-3-0, I think. Then yeah, it would be deemed a failure. I'm gonna go with Brazil as my flop team in the tournament. Yeah, so Spain are my winners. Yamal, best player. best young player. If not, if I don't want to use them all for two categories, I'm gonna go O'Reilly. See, I really like Neves though. You know, honestly, I want to say Neves, but the thing is, I have England going to the final, so it's gonna be O'Reilly. But if Portugal get to the final, let me say this: if Portugal gets to the final, it's Neves. I'm gonna put asterisk on that. Top goal scorer, I'm going with Kane. Honorable mention to Holland. Yeah, those are my predictions. We'll see how well they do. I'm excited for the World Cup. This video is running long. But yeah, let me just end it here, just because it's running so long. And yeah, I'll see you next video. Later.